It ought to concern every person because it is a debasement of our common humanity. It ought to concern every community because it tears at our social fabric. It ought to concern every business because it distorts markets. It ought to concern every nation because it endangers public health and fuels violence and organized crime. I'm talking about the injustice, the outrage of human trafficking, which must be called by its true name, modern slavery. Now, I do not use that word slavery lightly. It evokes, obviously, one of the most painful chapters in our nation's history. But around the world, there's no denying the awful reality. When a man desperate for work finds himself in a factory or on a fishing boat or in a field, working, toiling for little or no pay and beaten if he tries to escape, that is slavery. When a woman is locked in a sweatshop or trapped in a home as a domestic servant, alone and abused, and incapable of leaving, that's slavery. When a little boy is kidnapped, turned into a child soldier, forced to kill or be killed, that's slavery. When a little girl is sold by her impoverished family, girls my daughter's age, runs away from home or is lured by the false promise of a better life and then imprisoned in a brothel and tortured if she resists, that's slavery. It is barbaric and it is evil, and it has no place in a civilized world. Now, as a nation, we've long rejected such cruelty. Just a few days ago, we marked the 150th anniversary of a document that I have hanging in the Oval Office, the Emancipation Proclamation. With the advance of Union forces, it brought a new day, that all persons held as slaves would thenceforth be forever free. We wrote that promise into our Constitution. We spent decades struggling to make it real. We joined with other nations in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights so that slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms.
A so-called labor recruiter will come into rural villages and tell men, well, we have a great job for you in one of the Gulf states. Or they'll tell a girl, we have a great job for you in Kathmandu or along the Chinese border in a hotel or a restaurant. But I need to hold on to your passport before we get there. Of course, all this is a trap.
They promise them things. We're going to give you work. You can work in a hotel as a maid, or you can work in someone else's domestic servant. And once they get there, often their papers, their documents are taken, and then they're coerced into working for the trafficker or his associates.
I was a general manager in the biggest bank in Indonesia. I lost my job because of the economic turbulence fell out. I couldn't work, and I applied a job in the newspaper. The advertisement, it was in the newspaper. I got legitimate paperwork. While I came to United States, they didn't put me in the job that they offer. They put me into sex business.
We have an estimate that there's 100,000 children in prostitution in the United States, which is a giant number of children being commercially sexually exploited.
It is a national problem. Right now, there are almost 300,000 children. I'm not talking about adult women. 300,000 children that are being trafficked right here within our borders.
Japan is a gigantic market. Korea is a gigantic market. Parts of Southeast Asia, Thailand, Cambodia are also huge markets.
คนจากยุโรปคนจากอเมริกาเนี่ยเขาได้กินอาหารทะเลสดสะอาดราคาถูกแต่เราไม่เคยตั้งคำถามเลยว่าแล้วคนที่หาปลาเขามีชีวิตอยู่ยังไงลูกเรือบางคนบอกว่าชีวิตเขาราคาถูกกว่าปลาอีก
Thailand for many years has been facing a huge labor shortage, about 40 or 50,000 workers that are needed for fishing boats. And so with that difficulty, many migrant workers can be easily tricked or lied to in their recruitment process, which can begin in their home country and continue into Thailand.
เราช่วยเหลือเด็กที่เป็นผู้ติดตามของแรงงานข้ามชาติแล้วเด็กเหล่านี้เป็นแรงงานเด็กในอุตสาหกรรมประมงต่อเนื่องแล้วก็เราก็เห็นเด็กทำงานอยู่ในธุรกิจเนี้ยเขาก็ทำงานทั้งวันทั้งคืนเหมือนกันการทำงานกับเด็กเนี่ยทำให้เรารู้ว่าพ่อของบางคนเนี่ยคือออกไปหาปลาแล้วก็ไม่ได้กลับมานี่คือสิ่งที่เราถามอยู่ตลอดเวลาแล้วก็มันเกิดอะไรขึ้นกับธุรกิจนี้มันเกิดอะไรขึ้นกับคนที่ไปทำงานในทะเลไกลๆ
Everyone wants the best product for the cheapest price, right? The problem that can have around the world is that it can drive the price lower, and where does that finally fall? It falls on the backs of some of the most vulnerable workers.
ไปเดือนแรกก็ค้างค่าจ้างเลยเขาก็บอกว่าขอให้ทำงานต่อเดี๋ยวไปขึ้นปลาขึ้นอะไรเสร็จนะเดี๋ยวจะให้ตังค์ตามที่กำหนดแต่ก็จะทยอยจ่ายเดือนละ 5,000 อย่างเงี้ยโดยที่ตั้งแต่ไปเนี่ยไม่เคยได้ครบเลยแต่ทุกคนมันต้องยอมมันอยู่ในสภาวะจำยอมว่ามันอยู่ในทะเลมันไปไหนไม่ได้ก็ต้องทำงาน
And victims of trafficking who are on fishing vessels, they're very far away from help. You're isolated, you're alone with the crew on the boat, and there's really not much you can do when you're in the middle of the high seas and land maybe days or even weeks away.
Bàมีอยู่เท่าแก่คือทรมานลูกน้องคือว่าไม่ตัดบัญชีให้ลูกน้องด้วยคือลูกน้องขอกลับก็ไม่ให้กลับแต่เท่าแก่อินโดนะเรืออินโดเพื่อนมันบอกให้กลับก็ไม่ให้กลับใครขอกลับมันตีก็ทิ้งน้ำเพราะว่าน้าผมตาย2 คนแล้วอย่างเงี้ย
Makeup can be a tool for liberation and expression. It can make us feel beautiful, but one of beauty's most popular ingredients has a dark side.
जब हम लोग माइंस की खदानों में जब घुसते हैं तो वहाँ पे बहुत अंधेरा भी दिखाई देता है और हम लोग को बहुत डर भी लगता है कि हम लोग पता ना कि किधर से क्या गिर जाए। मैंने देखा बहुत सारे बच्चे को एक बच्चा का भी माथा फटा था।
Mica, an unassuming mineral essential to modern life.
The property of heat and electrical resistance makes this mineral invaluable.
For decades, it's been used in everyday products like electronics, insulation, paint, and even toothpaste. But over the past few years, the cosmetics industry's demand for glowing, radiant shimmer has exploded. From the perfect no-makeup gleam to the blinding shine of a highlighter created for double taps. Mica is often a magic ingredient.
रोज आते हैं।
Every day.
चुनेंगे नहीं तो खाएंगे क्या?
Do you ever get scared when you're working in the mines?
Yes. डर लगता है अंदर जाने में माटी गिर जाएगा तो दबा जाएंगे गिरे हुआ है मर आया था ढेबरा चुनने तो दबा कर वहीं पर रख गया
Can you tell me how old you were when you first started working in the mines?
कब से आती है काम करने?
5 साल 4 साल का
बच्चे तो मान लीजिए उनको एक तरह की सज़ा मिल रही है भट्टा पे। वो उनका एजुकेशन है, उनका जो सबसे पहला हक है, वो अगर वो काम कर रहे हैं तो भी, नहीं कर रहे तो भी उससे वो वंचित हैं। और स्वास्थ्य उनका सबसे ज़्यादा गिरा हुआ है।
एक तो लड़का है मेरा 14 साल का, एक लड़का है मेरा 9 साल का, एक वो मेरे 7 साल के लड़के। बच्चे को तो करनी है सारा काम, जब करेंगे ना तो खाएंगे का। नलका का पानी ऐसो न तो कपड़े धो पाओ और न तो देखो बर्तन धो पाओ, जमा गंदा पानी काई कैसा। जैसे रात के 1 बजे उठते हैं और 12 बजे लोग काम करते हैं, फिर खाना बना के खाते हैं, तो ये 2 घंटे आराम करके फिर 3 बजे फिर काम से लग जाते हैं। फिर काम से लगते हैंगे, मट्टी बनाते हैं, ईंट लगाते हैं।
They're forced to migrate to escape a starving situation. They barely survive and then return with nothing. So this is the ongoing, it's a cyclic problem.
पाँच साल काम किया था, ले जाने नहीं दिया उन्हों को दवाई दिलवाने। फिर वो सारी रात ऐसे ही हाथ पैर पटकता रहा वहीं पे और उल्टियाँ करने लगे। सुबह 7 बजे फिर ख़त्म हो गई वहीं पे। और मैं रोने चिल्लाने लगी तो ऐसे कहने लगे कि नहीं अभी तो ठीक है, ख़त्म नहीं हुआ है, तो इसकी दवाई कराएंगे। फिर वो उन्होंने दवाई तो नहीं कराई, घर पे लेके आ गए। जब ख़त्म हो गए तब तो कई मालिक ने कि 1 लाख रुपया देंगे हम, और फिर वो भी नहीं दिए, फिर मना कर दिया। 2 लड़कियां हैं मेरी, एक 5 साल की है, एक 1.5 साल की है। ये तो आप ही बताओ कैसे पालेंगे, कैसे क्या करेंगे।
On refusal to work or getting late to the work, the workers were thrashed. They were killed. The landlord himself is a court of law. He punishes the bonded laborers physically, mentally, economically. The state machinery, especially the police, punishes the people, and the magistrates, even they do not know the definition of bonded labor. They will always find, oh, he is not a bonded laborer, how he has come to my court, he is not chained, he is not kept in the captivity, so how you can claim that he is a bonded laborer? And dismiss the petitions filed by NGOs, filed by the bonded laborers, and that is a big hindrance to get justice.
Uzbekistan, a country in Central Asia, has a horrific tradition of cotton slavery. Ranking among the top of 2016's Global Slavery Index report, Uzbekistan has a deeply ingrained system of modern slavery. The government state of Uzbekistan owns most of its land, meaning farmers within the country don't own their own land and farms, but rather lease them from the government. This system allows for the government to impose cotton production quotas on its own people and publicly shames and punishes those who don't meet these quotas. The government has, in other words, created a monopoly on its cotton industry and benefits immensely off the back of its own citizens. As every annual harvest comes, civilians are recruited and forced to pick cotton to meet their quotas. This doesn't mean just farmers though. Teachers, doctors, and even children are taken from their schools and forced to work. They are slaves to their own country and are placed in camps with horrific work conditions, often without even having running water. Much of the cotton from Uzbekistan ends up in countries like China and Bangladesh, making it extremely hard to identify where their cotton was harvested. While countless companies have been caught using illegally sourced cotton that is then used in the production of their clothing, it isn't just the cotton material that is produced using slavery. The actual production of sewing and putting together the clothing itself is often traced to slavery as well. Saipan, an island located in the Pacific, while technically a U.S. territory, sets its own immigration laws. People from various impoverished countries were lured into immigrating to the island under false promises of jobs on American soil. When arriving to the island, though, these immigrants were forced to repay fees of up to $7,000, an amount far greater than any of them had. As a way to repay their fees, they were enslaved and forced to sew clothing for 12 hours or more a day, 7 days a week. They were also forced to refrain from practicing any religion, having children, or getting married. ABC News reported that women who became pregnant were forced into abortions to keep them working. A National Labor Committee report claimed workers were given just 3.3 minutes to sew together a woman's Victoria's Secret bikini. These bikinis, on the other hand, were sold for $14, while the worker was paid just 4 pennies.
Growing up, I never gave much thought to anything other than the price of the clothes that I bought, usually making choices based on the style or a good deal. Looking back, I learned that for a long time, most of our clothing was actually made right here in America. As recently as the 1960s, we were still making 95% of our clothes. Today, we only make about 3%, and the other 97% is outsourced to developing countries around the world.
The global marketplace is someplace where we export work to have happen in whatever conditions we want, and then the products come back to me cheap enough to throw away without thinking about it.
Well, globalized production basically means that all of the making of goods has been outsourced to low-cost economies, particularly where wages are very low and kept low. And what that means is that those at the top of the value chain, they get to choose where the products are being made, and they get to switch. If, for example, one factory says, we can't make it that cheap anymore, the brand will say, well, we're not going to come to you anymore, we're going to switch to another place which is cheaper.
In the West, they're using everyday low price. So every day they're hampering me and I'm hampering my workers. This is how it is. They're competing, the stores are competing in there. When the stores are coming to us for an order and negotiating, they're telling, look, that particular store is selling this shirt with like $5, so I need it to sell it in the $4. So you better squeeze your price, so we are squeezing.
আমার নাম সীমা, আমার বয়স 23 বছর। আমি ঢাকা আসছি তখন আমার বয়স ছিল 12 বছর, কারণ আমি ঢাকা আসছি আইসা আমার খালার কাছে থেকে আমি চাকরি করি গার্মেন্টসে। যখন আমি গার্মেন্টস চাকরি নিয়েছি তখন 700 টাকা বেতনে গার্মেন্টসের চাকরি নিয়েছি। তারপরে আমাদের এই অফিসে ইউনিয়ন করছি, এই ইউনিয়নের পর থেকে আমি প্রেসিডেন্ট পোস্টে আছি। তখনই স্যারের সাথে মানে দাবিনামাটা জমাও দেওয়া হয়েছে, স্যারেরা রিসিভও করছে। রিসিভ করার পরে স্যারের সাথে একটু কথা কাটাকাটি হয়, কথা কাটাকাটিতে হওয়ার পরবর্তীতে তারা দরজা লক করে 30-40 জন স্টাফ এবং স্যারেরা মিলে আমাদের উপরে এরকম আক্রমণ করে, অনেক মারধর করে এবং সাথে চেয়ার ছিল, তারপর মনে করেন যে ওই লাঠি ছিল, স্কেল মিস্কেল ছিল, সিজার মিজার ছিল, ওইগুলো দিয়ে এবং বেশিরভাগই আমাদের অত্যাচার করছে। তারা শুধু লাথি মারছে, ঘুষি মারছে এবং ওয়ালের সাথে মাথা বাইরে এসে বেশিরভাগই বুকে এবং তলপেটে এদিকে আমাদের অনেক আঘাত করছে স্টাফরা মিলা।
It's estimated that 1 in every 6 people alive in the world today work in some part of the global fashion industry, making it the most labor-dependent industry on Earth. Most of this work is done by people, like Shima, who have no voice in the larger supply chain.
So America became a peculiar country. You could criticize the education system to make the schools better. You could criticize the transportation system to make that work better. But you couldn't criticize the economic system. That got a free pass. You couldn't criticize, just, and if you don't criticize something for 50 years, it rots. It goes to seed. But one of the ways a healthy society works is it subjects its component systems to criticism so that we can debate it and hopefully fix it or improve it or do better. Capitalism couldn't be questioned.
Capitalism is the reason the fashion industry looks as it does today. It's the reason why workers in Bangladesh are paid so little, because if you're operating in a capitalist system, the main thing you have to do is create profit, and you have to create more profit than your competitors. And this is what drives companies to push wages down and down and down. Like companies don't go, like fashion retailers don't go to places like Bangladesh for any other reason except they can get the cheapest labour possible. Like there's no collective rights in Bangladesh, there's no trade union rights, there's a very, very low minimum wage, there's no like maternity benefits, there's no pensions. That is why the fashion industry is in Bangladesh, because it can reap the biggest profits out of those people that are making the clothes for them.
Before you can solve a problem, you have to admit you got one. And before we're going to fix an economic system that's working this way and producing such tensions and inequalities and strains on our community, we have to face the real scope of the problem we have, and that's with the system as a whole. And at the very least, we have to open up a national debate about it. And at the most, I think we have to think long and hard about alternative systems that might work better. My God, we can do better than this. If what we want is to spread, as I would argue we do, spread industry around the world, not concentrated in one place, let the benefits be shared globally, then let's do that in an orderly, reasonable, careful way.
We need to recognize that capital is just money. Money is a means, and people should be accountable for how it's used. We need to celebrate the creative power of human beings. And we need to talk of creative work. We must stop talking about labor. We need to look at the land as not a commodity to be speculated on and traded, but as the very basis of our life, as Mother Earth.
If you change all consumers into activists, all consumers asking ethical questions, all consumers asking quite simple questions about where their clothes are from, all consumers saying, I'm sorry, it's not acceptable for someone to die in the course of a working day.
We can't just roll over and say, yes, have it, do what you like. It's too important, it's too significant an industry. It has too much impact and effect on millions of people worldwide and common resources.
400 miles east of Delhi lies the Indian carpet belt. From here, 16 million pounds of carpets are imported just to Britain alone every year. In the very poor North Bihar, India, thousands of young children go missing as a result of being tricked into, lied to, and even kidnapped for slavery. Families search far and wide for their children as young as just 5 years old, but there is little to no hope once these children are gone. Though slavery is condemned in India, thousands of child labor camp children are found annually working in these carpet looms. This multi-million-dollar industry stems from and is operated out of small, average, normal-looking houses where, from the outside, it could never be known the abuse that goes on inside. Children are woken up at 5 in the morning and are put straight to work for 7 days a week. They work until midnight. These children, who are often stolen at extremely young ages, are sold to loom owners and are used to weave carpets for up to a staggering 20 hours a day, sleeping only 2 to 3 hours a night. These children never leave these small homes, never even seeing the outside. Impossible to escape, these looms are often cramped, hot, and locked from the outside. Children are beaten for subpar workmanship and are often not even allowed to use toilets. The horrific conditions leave children physically and emotionally scarred.
A disturbing new report is exposing evidence of widespread labor abuse in the lucrative palm oil industry. An Associated Press investigation uncovered dire conditions at plantations in Malaysia and Indonesia, the world's largest palm oil producers. In interviews, workers complained of various forms of exploitation, including child labor, slavery, and allegations of rape. Over the last 50 years, palm oil has become the world's most widely consumed vegetable oil, making its way into the supply chains of world-famous companies. Margie Mason is an investigative reporter for the Associated Press. She joins us now from Morgantown, West Virginia. Margie, thank you for being here. In your report, you say that palm oil is virtually impossible to avoid. Start off by telling us what it is, what it's used for, and how the recent surge in demand has impacted plantations where it's harvested.
Well, thank you for having me. Palm oil is in so many products. In the grocery store, it is in roughly half the products on the shelves there. And so you might see it in things like Kit Kat candy bars or Oreo cookies, but it also can be in things like Dove soap or Colgate toothpaste, and it can be hidden in up to 200 different ingredient names on the package. So you might not even know you're using it, but basically from the time you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night, you are probably using some form of palm oil.
Palm oil is found in a huge range of products, from food to cosmetics. The crop's rapid growth has spawned huge plantations, especially in Southeast Asia. Amnesty International says the burgeoning demand also is driving widespread labour abuses.
We interviewed about 120 workers who work on 7 plantations owned by different companies. We found children as young as 8 working on these plantations, helping their parents. We found forced labor where women workers are forced to work for 2 days but only paid for 1 day. We found people being exposed to really dangerous chemicals.
This 8-year-old boy was among those interviewed by Amnesty. All interviewees asked to hide their identity. He said he helps his father pick the palm kernels after school. He doesn't get any money, he says, and the sacks of kernels are very heavy. Another worker says he has to get his wife and children to help him with the harvest.
The plantation is too wide, so it is impossible to do it by myself without help. If I can't meet the target the company sets, then I will get a warning letter from the head of the company.
Other workers complain of deteriorating health because of exposure to chemicals, including lung and skin problems. All the plantations visited by Amnesty were either suppliers to or subsidiaries of the world's biggest palm oil exporter, Singapore-based Wilmar.
Wilmar, as the world's largest trader, is supplying virtually every big company you can think of. So we traced the palm oil from the plantations that we investigated to 9 big household name companies, which include companies like Unilever, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, Kellogg's, Colgate-Palmolive.
So we spoke to workers from 8 different countries, and most of them were migrant workers from poor countries in Asia. 2 examples I can give you were we spoke to some Rohingya minority Muslims who had escaped ethnic cleansing in Myanmar and had made their way through very harrowing journeys to Myanmar or to Malaysia, where they thought they were safe, and then they ended up being sold again onto palm oil plantations where they were forced to work. We also found former fishermen who were double trafficked. And so they had maybe come from Myanmar again or Cambodia and had gone onto ships in Thailand where they were held against their will for perhaps years, only to escape in Malaysia, where they were then forced to work on palm oil plantations. So, some of the stories that we found were just really incredible.
We took these pictures of prisoners marching to work in blue uniforms. Many of these inmates are here for life. In another camp in the capital of Qinghai province, these prisoners are processing sheepskin and making leather goods which, as we discovered, will end up in stores across America and around the world. The videotape was shot by Harry Wu, a former Chinese political prisoner now living in California. He agreed at great personal risk, since he's still a Chinese citizen, to go back with a hidden camera to do what no outsider has ever done before: take pictures inside Chinese forced labor camps.
You spent a total of how much time in prison?
19 years.
19 years.
Harry Wu's crime? As a student, he spoke out against the Soviet invasion of Hungary. Not far from Beijing, Wu managed to get us into the Qinghe prison farm, where he spent 4 of his 19 years as a political prisoner, and where he says he was nearly starved to death. Entrance is strictly forbidden to anyone but labor camp personnel. But on this day, as we drove 15 miles from one end of the camp to the other, no one stopped us. We could never figure out why. Along the way, we could see prisoners at work building a canal with picks and shovels, which is exactly what Harry Wu did when he was in this prison.
If they catch you doing this, what happens to you?
Go back to the camp again.
You could go back to prison.
Of course, they will put me back again.
Why are you doing it then?
Because I think the world have to realize there's a camp system in China.
A prison camp system modeled on the now defunct Soviet Gulag, which experts say is made up of several thousand labor camps and millions of prisoners. Most prisoners are forced to sign confessions before they're even tried, and once convicted, few have a realistic chance to appeal their sentences. Human rights groups say brainwashing and torture are rampant. The Lee brothers, both former political prisoners now living in Hong Kong, were released just 2 months ago after former President Jimmy Carter intervened. They'd been jailed right after the Tiananmen Square movement required to do forced labor, and they claim tortured.
It's very painful to recall. Once I sat on a stone bench with a table in front of me. One policeman sat on the other side, questioning me. Another stood behind me. Whenever I refused to admit something, the one behind me would strike me with an electric prod. The shock made me tremble, and I couldn't sit still. I fell on the ground. It was unbearable.
How many political prisoners are there? Recent secret Chinese documents indicate that approximately 1 in 10 are in prison for political reasons, says China scholar Orville Schell, who was our consultant on this story.
We don't really know how many prisoners there are. Let's take 5 million. It's a totally arbitrary number, and we can't be much more definite, but that means that there's 500,000 political prisoners. The question is, who is making the goods?
Prisoners.
Prisoners. And who are the prisoners? If you have people who are locked up without trials, who are locked up because somebody didn't like what they said, what they thought, what religion they believed in, what they wrote, the kind of films they make, the kinds of poetry they write, this, I think, at least most Americans would find very offensive.
All prisoners, including political prisoners, are supposed to reform themselves by doing forced labor, reform through labor, as the Chinese call it. And this is one of the prison factories where reform through labor takes place, a plant on a busy street in Shanghai that makes hand tools. From the front, it looks like a normal factory, but behind the facade on a side street, the barbed wire and the guard tower are unmistakable. This man, who is afraid of being identified, is a former high-ranking Chinese police official, now living in Hong Kong, who is familiar with the plant's operation.
So who are the people who work in this plant?
The majority are reformed through labor prisoners, criminals, labor reform criminals.
Prisoners who are there performing what we would call forced labor, working against their will?
Yes.
No doubt about that.
Yes. No doubt whatever.
Posing as a Chinese-American businessman who wanted to import hand tools, Harry Wu met with officials at the Shanghai Liaodong Machinery Factory, the prison factory that makes the tools. Wu asked about purchasing some to sell in the United States and secretly recorded the conversation. Remember, it is illegal for forced labor goods from any country to be sold in the U.S.
We would like to speak quite openly with you because in the U.S., Congress recently made a big deal about the special nature of our kind of enterprises.
What about the special nature of your enterprise?
Our products are never exported directly. We always go through the import-export company system.
As far as I know, the U.S. has a trade law that prevents importation of products made by prison labor.
But we will be exporting indirectly.
But they'll be able to find out. This will give us trouble because the customs will find out.
Not if we don't export directly.
We invited the prison officials to another meeting in a Shanghai hotel room and secretly recorded our conversation. Harry Wu introduced me as the president of the American company interested in importing their hand tools. I told them that the one thing that bothered me was the reliability of their prison workforce.
Given that these people are what you call reform through labor, we would call forced labor, that they are reliable. I mean, that they turn out a good quality product
They told me there'd be no problem, that their factory had been in business for 41 years.
Hur mycket av produktionen här kommer från Kina?
Sortiment som man har till hösten så kommer 95% ifrån Kina.
In Europe, we spend more than $20,000 billion on toys and games every year. A large part of these toys are bought at Christmas time. But who makes these toys?
När jag var liten fick jag reda på att det var barn som gjorde de här leksakerna på McDonalds. Då ville inte jag ha dem längre. För att det var andra barn som gjorde det. Jag tror det var vuxna eller maskiner som gjorde det. Så jag vill inte ha McDonalds längre. McDonalds-leksaker. Fast annars skulle jag fortsätta köpa dem.
In the factories there are dormitories and canteens where almost all migrant workers sleep and eat. The low wages render other options impossible.
Workers should have a choice to stay or eat inside the factories or outside the factories. The different wage should be enough for the workers to stay and live outside. This should be their choice.
The workers live in cramped quarters, often 12 to 20 in a room. The only storage for private possessions is in their beds. Wages have, in principle, remained unchanged for several years, while prices in this region have gone up by several 100%. As a result, workers are forced to live their lives inside the factories. Their wages wouldn't last long outside the factory walls.
The most serious problem is that it damages their health very much. Sometimes it's not about the problems of the machine. It's only because they have to work for long hours and they cannot concentrate in their work and they make mistakes and then, they hurt themselves.
What accident can happen?
Sometimes the workers, maybe they are very tired and then they forget, and then when there's a manual operation, the workers maybe accidentally didn't pull away the arms and then the move close suddenly. Yeah, this is the problem.
ผมอยากให้ผู้ที่บริโภคผลิตภัณฑ์ของมาเจเล็ตนะครับก็อยากให้มองว่าคนงานมาเจเล็ตก็ไม่ได้สะดวกสบายอะไรประมาณนั้นครับเพราะว่าที่ผลิตกันมาเนี่ยก็ด้วยน้ำเหงื่อน้ำแรงก็ยังลำบากอยู่ครับยังลำบากอยู่แต่บริษัทก็ไม่เคยขาดทุนนะครับบริษัทไม่เคยขาดทุนก็อยากให้สนับสนุนนะครับแต่ให้รู้ว่าคนงานมาเจเล็ตลำบากอยู่
We plopped down in Tangerang, Indonesia, this industrial suburb outside of the capital of Jakarta, with the plans that for the next month we were going to live as Nike's factory workers lived, which meant that we were going to go live in a workers' slum outside of the capital, and we were going to live on the workers' wages, $1.25 a day for the next month, to try and come maybe to a better understanding of what it's like for Nike factory workers to make this kind of money and live under these conditions. We lived in a 9x9 cement box. It was over 100 degrees, 100% humidity, a small window, certainly no air conditioning.
No furniture. You slept on a very thin mat
on an uneven cement floor covered in shelf paper.
The streets outside of your home are lined by open sewers, and what that means, like in the rainy season, you would have all that feces just float up into the streets and into your house.
And every time that you go to the bathroom, it comes back out into the sewer for everybody else to see and smell.
We would go to different workers' homes. You got like 4 women sleeping in an 8x8 cement box, and all their possessions are in there, like everything in this small area.
The workers would have to share a bathroom with 5 to 10 other families. The workers would have to share living quarters, actually like a row of shacks with corrugated tin roofs. All of those families would share a laundry corner and a kitchen facility, and they would all share the same well to take the water out of.
$1.25 a day after you've paid for your rent, water, electricity, any major transportation costs, you're going to be left on average with roughly 7,000 rupiah per day. What the hell does that mean? That's going to buy you 2 simple meals of rice and vegetables, a bag of peanuts, a bottle of iced tea, and some dish detergent. And that's all you can get. And that's your reward?
Without a doubt. We found it out in the first week that we were there. There's no way that you can live on $1.25 a day and maintain your human dignity. It's just not possible.
I lost 25 pounds living on Nike's wages in Indonesia. I spent the month painfully hungry and tired and near the point of exhaustion most days.
I just felt my energy storage was just depleted, and I just started going downhill fast, and I just started getting sick every day.
And she got very sick one day. She had a fever of 104, and she's got to deal with, well, I have a fever of 104, I can buy aspirin and a little drink box to get some vitamin C, but if I buy those 2 things, I don't eat for the rest of the day. I'm walking down this dirt path into this village, and I see this massive pile of scrap shoe rubber that I later learned came from one of Nike's factories, and piles like that get dumped there all the time, and the end result of these piles is that they get burned in that village in the big open space where kids play, and the burning fumes, I learned from the company that designs Nike shoe rubber, will give off toxins and carcinogens. Kids are paying the price. And they're the ones with the chest infections, and they're the ones that are going to develop cancer.
If the tag says this, or this, or this, then this means that this item was made by a slave. So the choice to support slavery is actually is up to you.